Here comes the Nastygram.
Send a priest to save my soul, forget it. Send a doctor, take my
Welcome back to the Nastygram D&D podcast for a special Game Master Roundtable discussion. This is Josh, and I am joined by... Just your first name will do.
Hey, this is Jake, and I'm playing a human entertainer, I guess.
A bard of some sort?
Are you sure that's an
That's a
approved background?
That's my
Lore master?
This is Devin, and I'm here to mark parts that we need to cut out of the recording.
And Dan, playing the role of old, curmudgeonly D&D player.
So, just the four of us around the table today, and we wanted to have a little discussion, as probably indicated by the title, about the new 2024 PHB. I don't know what else to call it, because I think that's kind of what they're calling it.
They don't want to call it 5.5 yet, right?
A lot of people are calling it 5.5 or just 2024, yeah.
Yep. I know some time ago you'd heard D&D 1. I think they've moved away from that. But basically, they came out with a new PHB with some updated rules. Everything is supposed to be backwards compatible. There's a new DMG and Monsters Manual coming out in the coming year, I believe. So I think the comparison to 5.5 is very valid because it isn't a brand new edition. I think even more than 3.5, it is supposed to be compatible with existing stuff. But we all have copies in front of us. Some of us have played in games using this new one. Nothing that's been released, but stuff we've kicked around with. But we thought we'd just kind of talk about it. Talk about what we think about some of the differences.
Fight about it a little.
Fight about it, probably.
And we've all made at least one character.
Yep.
Because we plan a lot of games that we don't play.
That's true.
True. We haven't talked too much off mic about it. So this is going to be pretty fresh. We've talked a little bit, but haven't really got into how we what we really think. At least I haven't with you guys. Mm-hmm. So
are you lighting it on fire right now?
There we are. How do you want to do this? Should we just give our initial take on it? Should we talk about, who thinks they have the best understanding that can give a description of some of the major changes?
I can do that pretty accurately, I think.
Devin's
Devin?
giving the evil eye?
I agree with Jake.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Devin probably could too. You probably read it a lot, right?
So Jake, why don't you kind of give an overview, Devin, if you think he's missed anything? Try to keep this objective.
An unbiased overview.
Keep this just objective of what things have changed, been added or removed.
Okay.
I think you're wrong.
So this is the same game. If you played D&D 5, you don't really need to read this whole book. One of my first questions to myself was, in order to run a game, do I need to read every rule? Because there's going to be little changes that kind of catch me. That maybe they slightly change the way initiative works or something like that. And the answer is no. The structure of how you play the game is almost identical. They haven't made any sort of sweeping changes to the combat or how the meat and bones work. What has changed are sort of the details of to start, the biggest change is the actual abilities that you're getting in some of the classes. The details of some of the prestige class, not prestige. Yeah, I'm old. Prestige classes. The what are they called?
Subclasses.
Subclasses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the details there have changed a little bit. So the details within each class, and we'll get into that because I would say that is 85% of what's different about this edition is the details in each class. And right off the bat, I'm trying to flip to. I mean, I wish I should have written this down. Like, how many actual pages are dedicated to just the classes? Because it's crazy.
It's substantial.
We don't get past. So there's some stuff in the beginning which we'll talk about like just how to play D&D and like and the basics and everything. But from page 50 to page 175 is just all the classes and all the subclasses.
125 pages.
125 pages of this book, and this book is
Just about half of it.
380 pages, but a lot of that's index.
And then you got a ton of spells.
Yeah. So, but that's a considerable chunk of this book is dedicated to just like here's every class and all their subclasses, and a lot of the details there have changed. The other big changes, so they've changed the way backgrounds work. Those are much more important now. They've changed the way races work, and they're species now. I'm not going to editorialize, but a lot of these changes aren't actually changes. They're changes that were made in other books that have been brought into this book.
Tasha's
most of this is Tasha's was a sort of playtest for this.
Yep.
But you're seeing a lot more race species options. You're seeing feats are going to be more important because there's more ways to get them. So the feat section is a little bit bigger. And then after feats, equipment. So the big change with equipment that if you've looked into this at all, you've heard a lot of people talking about are mastery properties for weapons. So that's a big change. Every weapon essentially has an ability. Only certain classes can unlock those abilities, but they add some diverse options to the weapons. But it adds an extra layer that you need to learn if you're playing a fighter. So, the quote-unquote boring human fighter has a little bit more they need to learn now. They're going to pick a bunch of weapons that have different abilities. So that's a big change. And then, sorry, just flipping through. What's the next section?
Probably spells.
Spells. There's a couple new spells. For the most part, it's all the same, but the way a lot of them work is different. And there's a lot of that's where some of the nuance is. Some of the things that might kind of catch you up if you played 5 a lot and you're like, oh well, I just cast this spell, and it's like, well, you've cast that spell 100 times in other games, but you might want to read it. It might be slightly different.
And they now kind of describe it as the magic action versus
and that, Dan, speaks to sort of this other thing, like the organization of this book is a lot different, a lot better. But they have kind of standardized everything. So, with the idea of a magic action being like, kind of the same but different for everyone. They've put a lot of wording in there that seems like it's there to build upon in other books.
What I kind of thought of it or described it in my head as they almost gamified it in to make it digestible, to make it, to have those keywords that you can.
So I for a long time I used to play this game called Malifaux, and Malifaux is a tabletop like strategy game. But what would happen is you would see like a new like character would come out, and they would have like an ability that kind of did nothing, and you'd be like, oh, that's weird, and it's like, oh well, that's there to like build upon in when other things come out, like maybe that does nothing right now, but like when the monster manual comes out, it's going to anyone who has X is so I think a lot of the phrasing and terminology in this book is future planning.
Sure.
They call it natural language, where pretty much everything you read should be like pretty straightforward to discern without having to look to other places to figure it out.
And they have that glossary, I think, to support it too. Which is, as you said, the format, the structure of it. Just in the index alone, the index of 5th edition is a real sight to behold. It still blows my mind.
It's unbelievable
how that ever got published. But they've
anything you want to look up, you get the result. See this
Yep.
instead.
It makes you jump through so many hoops. It's insane. And we always joke around about it because it's like you can put like fire damage and then it's like see elemental damage and it's like you could have just given
put
us
the
the
page
page.
number.
It would have been less letters. It would have been easier to do.
Okay, that's overview.
Yeah,
Devin,
that's great.
anything to add objectively?
No, I think it's good. That was a good overview.
All right. Do we want to give our initial hot takes?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not? Let it rip.
Start with Jake.
I've talked a lot.
Well, you just gave the nice thing. You did the hard work.
My initial hot take. Okay, so overall, I would say I like it. I'm happy that it exists. I'm excited to try it and to play it. I'm disappointed that they didn't do more. Josh talked a little bit about how this is supposed to be backwards compatible, and how it kind of builds on other things. And to be honest, that's a disappointment to me. I think that there's a lot of rules in D&D that I'd love to see go away, and I feel like they pulled a lot of punches here. They could have. I'm happy with the things they did. I wish they had done a lot more.
Okay.
Do you think that had they done more, they would have been accused of like money grab? You just want to sell more books. You want to get rid of everything else.
I mean, maybe because people are stupid, but I personally feel like this is more. This feels like more of a money grab to me than coming out with a new edition.
Not you listeners. You,
Because
you guys are great.
No, of course, yeah. But do you know what I'm saying? Like coming out with a book that's like, well, this is basically already what you have, but just your character is going to be more powerful. Feels like more of a money grab than here. We addressed the problems. We made a new game. You know. And yeah, there's always going to be that knee-jerk reaction of I'm not going to play it because I have a bunch of the old books on the shelf, and we're responsible for that. You know, we played 3.5 for many years because we had all the books on the shelf and we didn't want to switch, and that might be kind of why they're going that direction. But I just part of me just feels like you guys are being fucking cowards. Like make a new game, make a new edition. This book is 10 years from the last book. Does that mean that we need to wait another 10 years before we get a new edition? You know, before we get rid of some of the rules that are kind of shitty that we probably don't use anyway?
Maybe not. I mean, with the popularity in which it's growing, like D&D was still very subculture for most of our childhood and as we grew up. So I think you just didn't see a lot of money getting pumped into it like you do now.
True.
So, that may be part of it.
But yeah, so overall, I do like it. I just wish I wish it was a new edition. Yeah.
I have a theory that there were people at Wizards or at Wizards of the Coast that wanted to do that with the new edition. But it's, and then those people don't work at Wizards anymore. Like Mike Merles, who is one of the lead game designers on D&D 5th edition. He was very vocal about, he hated the bonus action. He said the biggest mistake we made with D&D 5th edition is the bonus action. If I could do it again, I'd take it away. And there was one day that he woke up and checked his emails and found out he didn't have a job anymore.
Well, why don't you follow that up with another hot take, Devin? What do you think about the 2024 Player's Handbook?
I think it's cool. Jake said.
All right, Dan, what do you think?
That is the hot take, because no one agrees with me. I think the 85% of stuff that it's all building a character. Your backgrounds, your feats, your class, your subclass, your spells. Classes get to do their cool stuff more. There's a lot of refunding on a short rest. There was a little Reddit post, a thread about how they're trying to get away from sort of the 8 encounter adventuring day and give you options and character things that aren't balanced around 7 encounters a day before a long rest. And I think the changes to the feats are good. Every feat now gives you an ability score increase.
Other than origin feats.
Correct. Yeah, all the general feats. That's another thing. General feats and origin feats are split up. I think that's a good thing. Where the general feats, the ones that you get at 4th level and 8th level and so on.
Well, I mean, the origin feats are a completely new thing for this book, so
Yeah.
we should probably talk. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to. This is built just like 2024. We're putting things in place that we're going to expound upon later. The general feats, you get an ability score increase, and some of the sort of weaker ones have been updated so that they all give a benefit. There's a feat called Skilled in 5th edition, and it gives you 3 proficiencies in any skill or tool that you'd like, and that's it, and that's the feat. Now, when you are, maybe you have a wizard that think I'm really smart. My wizard is really smart, and I want to have all of my, intelligence skills, and I want to have perception, blah, blah. You then, you have to choose between that feat, which just gives you a little bonus to those skills, versus feats that give you extra spells per day, especially in the supplements like Xanathar's and Tasha's. There's some really cool feats that have some really powerful, that give you extra stuff that you can do. What the 2024 Player's Handbook does is every single general feat gives you an ability score increase and gives you something extra. So it balances the playing field. So it gives you the freedom to, choose a feat that is thematic to your character, to your idea, but also gives you, that power boost if you're looking for it. But in terms of making a character, and I've made a few characters at this point. I have a couple different groups of friends that I play with, and everyone finds something that they like, and their abilities are really cool. It's still really fresh, so there's a lot of things, changes that were done to certain classes that, even before knowing about it, we would say, wouldn't it be cool, or doesn't it make sense that my moon druid can cast certain spells while I'm in my wild shape, stuff like that. They've differentiated some of the spell casting classes. The sorcerers have this really cool innate magic ability. I think it's, in terms of making a character and playing a character, it's good changes.
All right. The benefit of going after the two of you is I can kind of play off of the two of them, which is, I think to Jake's point, when I look at the new book, it's a matter of context, or a matter of what lens I'm looking at the book through. If I'm looking at it as what is to be a brand new system, yes, as you said, it feels like they didn't push hard enough. If I'm looking at it as a 5.5, then I'm actually pretty happy with the book. They made a lot of changes to the classes that I thought were appropriate, that I thought make it more fun. Really, when I kind of step back and look at it, though, the two things, if I were to give you like the biggest positive to come out of it, maybe, and the biggest shortcoming that I see, the shortcoming is I'm still disappointed with skills. Coming from 3rd edition or 3.5, there was just, you were always allotted a skill progression, which makes a lot of sense as an adventurer, as a hero, that you're building your skill sets. This is still there's a very narrow method to gaining greater proficiency or greater skill bonuses to your character, which I just don't understand. And maybe that's because the numbers just aren't so big as they were in 3.5. So maybe the difficulty brackets have kind of changed, and those field goals have moved. But overall, I still think that the skills are underwhelming. And then what I like about it, what I like about the new edition, is a lot of the short rest, the reaction, and the bonus abilities. How it's broadening those categories and the things that you can do within those contexts, so that you don't feel quite so limited. Which 3.5 had, so many feats and so many different things, and it seemed like you kind of got into a very particular set of actions that you could do on your turn, and it was a little more rote. Now you seem to be getting a lot more flexibility back. As Devin said, that you can kind of do your class ability much easier now, so you kind of always retain the essence of whether you're a cleric or a druid or whatever that is, while still allowing the opportunity to improvise when you're not called to be that thing specifically, which I think just adds a lot of dimension to it. So, I'm excited to play more of it for sure.
Okay.
Josh has just propped himself up in the chair. He's
Getting
got
comfortable.
that lean.
Don't worry, Josh. I was pretending that I like this system. I got plenty of shit to talk about. it.
So I don't know. I'm coming in a weird place. So I will just say I really like D&D 5th edition.
More
And
than 3.5?
much more.
Okay.
Because I think it went in a direction, and ironically, I think at when the first time we played 5th edition, so D&D 3.5 came out in 2003.
Gross.
We played it until 2020. So when you talk about like resistance to move on to new editions, we are that problem, as Jake said, because there's a lot of people look at the shelf that is bowing under the weight.
Literally.
Two things, though. Arguably, 4th edition is one of the worst editions they put out. And 3.5 and some of the 3.0 books are some of the best books they've ever put out.
Sure, okay.
But I think to Josh's point is for 6 years,
Yep.
we didn't play 5th edition.
Yeah, that's true.
after 12 years of not playing the 4th edition. So I like 5th edition, and since we've played it, I had played a good number of role-playing games. I have since played by far more. I mean, since especially since starting the podcast, I've played more games, some of which you guys have heard, but countless scores and scores of games that we haven't put released, that we've just fucked around, we've recorded, we've played different systems, things like that. To me, 5th edition is a really great does a really great job of walking the line between having a relatively crunchy number-based sword and sorcery kind of system that is still flexible enough to not be bound in minutia. Because once you set down that path, it's like the only way to do it better is to do what Pathfinder does. And, I know I always rib Devin about it, but Pathfinder does that, I think, as good as any game out there, where there is a rule for everything. And I think 5th edition does this great job of having a little bit of vagueness out there. Just like, hey, there's advantages and disadvantages. That's it. Instead of like all the different minuses and pluses you can have. And the skill progression, it's not great, but it's really simple. Like the action economy, people complain about a bonus action, blah, 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 but it's really simple. Like it never changes. You have a move action, an action, a bonus action, a reaction. It doesn't change when you're 20th level or your first level. And for us in our style of play, which is in general much more story-based, I think it works really well for that. While still giving a little bit more grit than, a little more crunch rather than, a Monster of the Week or games that are just very story-driven, Fate and things like that. This 2024 edition, I get it. Like one of the things that I immediately realized after some knee-jerk reaction looking through it is like, oh, this isn't for us. 100%. Like, we're not the audience anymore. 40-year-old nerd, not the audience.
We already got you.
But think about the cultural... 5th edition came out in 2014. Think about how much has changed in the world of tabletop in the last 10 years, probably more than any other 10-year period.
Absolutely.
Stranger Things came out in 2016. Podcasts getting popular. Actual plays.
Critical
Twitch,
Role.
Critical Role.
Role.
Streaming.
COVID.
The COVID, yes. Remote gaming, virtual tabletop, all this kind of shit has come since D&D's last edition, last expansion. So I think it's very smart for them to and say what you want, money grab stuff, whatever. I have my frustrations about DLC stuff and D&D Beyond and where they might be going. I'll just say, hey man, if you're pissed about corporations trying to make money, there's a lot of better places to put your ire than the writers of tabletop role playing games. Okay, no one at Wizard of the Coast is a billionaire. Okay, and they're never going to be. So I get it, but they're a company. They need to make money.
Right.
The way the book is structured, the way it's written, everything is for a new, larger audience. The first section is on how to play the game. That's never happened in any D&D edition before.
Are you sure?
Really?
I'm pretty sure. I looked through every book on our shelf. I never
We
saw
don't have
fourth
fourth
edition.
Yeah.
But every other edition has started with character creation or something similar.
I would say that is abnormal in the world of role-playing books. Most role-playing books, not D&D, but other systems, start with here's what a role-playing game is. Here's an example of play.
D&D has always been like,
Fuck you should know already.
fuck you, are you in or you out? This is appealing, and the one of the things that we've talked about on Mike is, dude, like that first there are pictures, there's art in that first chapter which shows players, regular human players,
Not characters,
sitting around a table playing D&D. And I wanted to fucking throw up in my mouth when I saw that.
What they really should do is just put them on all separate pages on computers.
If you're watching at home, page 18, page 21.
But I get it. They're realizing this has more reach. They want to get people who didn't grow up playing this, that maybe might be getting their first exposure, that might have gone and saw the D&D movie or seen Critical Role or heard a podcast or whatever, and make it more accessible. And then everything that goes from that, the layout, like you guys talked about, it's all a little bit easier to use. It's a little bit more user-friendly. At the end of the day, what I really don't like about this edition is the gamification of it, which is, I think, something Dan talked about. Fifth edition, everybody, or any edition, every edition, people talk about, like, the power dynamics. What are the best builds? What are the strongest characters? Like, Rangers suck in fifth edition, whatever. We don't really play in a way that I think that ever matters, because we play story-driven games. I've played Rangers in fifth edition. I don't think they suck. They're fun. This edition, although, like, on surface level, you can look at it and be like, oh, cool, it adds a lot more customization. It adds things, more choices. It adds different abilities, different things you can do. That's all cool. What it takes away is, I think, a lot of what made the different classes different. Like, now every class has 4 subclasses. You get a subclass at 3rd level. You get a feat at this level. It's leaning a little bit too hard for me into game balance at the cost of, like, I don't really care that much about game balance. It was close enough. We don't play like min-max games, so it doesn't matter to us. We're not power gamers. Warlocks were different. They got, you had a patron and a pack boon. They happen at different levels. Clerics get their thing at 2nd level. Wizards had kind of like 8 different subclasses called their arcane whatever, and it came. Things happen at different levels for different classes, and they were more. They were more unique. This is just flattening, and it feels more video game-ish to me. They're trying to make sure, and it goes right into the character creation. It's like you have your class, you have your background, you have your species. The species race thing, I get it. That's like a, somewhat of a
Antiquated.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious.
They always were species, so it's and like, you take away the ability modifiers for that, and you put in your background. Does it make sense? Like, not like really. Like, obviously, physiologically, there should be more difference from a Goliath to a halfling. But I get it. It's a fantasy game, and nobody wants to do whatever. And there's no half elves or half orcs anymore, because
there is. Well, there is a part in there that talks about that.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
It's a small,
But whatever. But to me, it's making it more like they're just skins you wear. Like, everything is a skin. They're not like it's just like the magic is
Everything's
even
the same.
Everything is kind of the same. Magic is even more distributed, even more like almost every species has like some innate spell casting, and like the backgrounds, like they put 16 out there or whatever there are, but they're just like cookie cutter, and eventually it'll just
Their formula.
there'll be a formula. You pick two of these, whatever. It doesn't. Your choices don't really matter. You're just making. You're picking essentially. At the end of the day, you're going to pick your like the things you want to be able to do, and everything else is just dressing. And maybe that's fine. That's a game. But to me, like I liked it more that like an orc is going to be tougher and maybe not as smart, and you're gonna pick a class, and that class gets different abilities at different levels, and it might be different than some of your peers. You get something cool at 4th level, somebody else gets something cool at 2nd or 3rd level. Like it's just that worked, and this is a better game than 5th edition. But to me, it's a more generic game. So that was a very not short take.
Can I just quick
That's
respond
like
to that?
your opinion, man.
So in terms of like an orc being stronger and dumber, that if you use Tolkien lore or
honestly,
Forgotten
that's
Realms,
the least. I feel the least strongest about that of anything.
this applies sort of. I'm going to apply it generally. I don't know. I'm sure D&D has done their polls and things like that, but from a lot of the people that I talk to in my little circles, most people use homebrew settings with homebrew areas. I mean, we have hand-drawn maps up on the wall of you guys have this very vast world that you've made. And these rules, these updated rules, I think are more conducive to people using their homebrew worlds where the orcs might not be roving bands of, just like, barbarian tribes, but you have now the freedom to say, orcs live in these types of communities and are known for this type of thing. Elves live in.
So you can stereotype them just in your own unique way.
Sure. I mean, it makes, but that's the thing.
No, I get what you're
that,
saying.
People do that because then it's easier, it's easier to understand an elven kingdom, to say, the elven kingdoms are like this and the human civilizations are like this.
I think.
Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're saying.
I think your point still stands, Devin, but so does Josh's in that it's flattening everything.
Right.
So that you can apply it to
but what you're saying is it's flattening it so that you can put your own spices on it.
Yeah.
Right. And we have it because we have not seen the updated Dungeon Master's Guide. We have not seen the updated Monster Manual.
So
the stuff in this book is for making characters and playing the game at its base level. And I think these changes make it so that, it's not the Warlock Hexblade level 1 dip. It's sort of
it is still.
But it's like, if we're starting a game at level 1, everyone who makes a character is going to be sort of at the same, at a similar place where, if you started at level 2, there are some classes like the wizard that gets their arcane tradition or the druid that got their circle.
Devin,
at level 2,
right there?
other subclasses don't get theirs until level 3.
The thing is, you're making a very logical argument that I think most people, including me, would agree with. But it's Josh. It's just his opinion. Like, I mean, it's his. He doesn't want it to be balanced. He wants it to be, more chaotic. I agree with you. I think most people would agree with you. But I think that what you're missing is that Josh knows that it's not balanced.
Yeah, right.
And he's not asking for it to. He wasn't asking. You know what I mean?
Well, I can't change the book, but
you don't, and you don't need to, and you also can't change his opinion. It's just what it is.
Well, I can change his opinion. Opinions change all the time.
You met him?
Yes. And I was actually surprised at some of the things that came out of his mouth.
Because I agree with you, Devin. Like, I'm surprised that you don't like that the game is more balanced. Because I think that 99% of people are going to think that's better. But I respect the fact that you don't like it, and that I see what you're saying about wanting it to be a little more kind of free flowing. But yeah, I mean,
Maybe not putting
yeah.
words in your mouth, but I'd say it's the cost of the balance is the issue, right?
It's just it's the way you said flattening.
Yep.
It is that. It's like everything kind of ends up being the same. You're making a WoW character. You're playing a video game where your DPS is always going to be the same because we have to like make sure that
there's balance.
So it's
across
kind
the
of
party.
like it takes some of the consequences out of the path you choose.
which is, I think, an intentional move
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
book.
And honestly, it's
Yep.
smart.
Yeah.
It's
I get
like I
it.
said, I think it's a better game. I just don't think it's a better role playing system for what I like. It's funny. I made a character, and I will say this to eat crow. As much as I love pen and paper, I don't like doing these kind of games on computer stuff. But I had set up the D&D Beyond thing. I made a character on it. Dude, it's really easy.
It's really easy. Yep.
And I know we did that with Devin when we played a little Pathfinder test. And, I get it. I get that it's easy. And then like it puts
All the
everything on your
spells
sheet.
are there. It's great. But here's the thing. Now, and Devin's smiling very smugly, everyone. But here's the thing.
This is just my face.
You said this earlier, and I think that this is why it's so much easier, is because it's got the gamification is creating what I'll call Pathfinder creep, in that there's so many more things that you have to keep tabs on that now, and that's not completely fair. I still do make a crazy spreadsheet for everything that I can do for 5th edition in order to keep track of it, especially when you're high level. But some of the things that I like about the new edition and all the different little things you can do with your reactions or bonus actions, etc. That's just more and more things you have to keep track of in order to play your character optimally and well and have it be fun. So I think the irony is that simplicity of going online and moving away from the pen and paper, which we've loved for so long, is a little bit because of that broadening.
I have a wild prediction, Josh, and we'll only time will tell. I think as you play more of this edition, you're going to feel that less. I think that once you become more familiar with it and start trying to make weird characters, you're going to find that there is a lot more kind of diverse options that make wacky fucking
He's going to really struggle to make suboptimal characters.
No, I do. I think, I've made a lot of characters now and ran a game. And I think the more time you spend with it, the more you'll realize I can do this weird thing. And there is
the weapon masteries add a very cool dynamic. I played a rogue, and the things you can do with some of the weapon masteries. If you hit with a weapon, the next time you attack, you have advantage before the end of your next turn. Well, that's free sneak attack if I hit that attack.
I have a
so
question.
You can change. You can have these. I was playing this sort of pistolero saber wielding rogue where, all I needed was one round where someone was up in melee. The rest of the time, I could be 10 paces away with no one else in sight and still be able to get advantage on the attack roll, do my sneak attack damage, which lends to, a different type of rogue rather than, the sneaking, stabbing, stuff like that. So I agree with Jake. The more you play it, the more you see these different options, and you'll have these, it happened in 5th edition where you have these moments like, oh, this is a really cool ability. I wonder how this would work if I did this.
I think
and then you're playing D&D.
What you don't want is you don't want to get to a point where you fall into in combat, into a cycle of and the rogue is a good example, where it's you don't want the game to become, well, I'm a rogue, so my every turn is attack, move, hide, and I found that when we played a higher level game where I played a sorcerer, and I was every fight is dual, twin spell, chromatic orb, then this, and when you fall into those patterns and it kind of gets boring, and I don't know, I haven't played enough to know if that's going to be an issue, but I think it does seem like there's more options.
We should do a high level game.
I have a
soon.
question.
We'll get there.
Because Josh and I are the only two that I don't think have played 5th, right? Or 5.5.
2024.
2024.
Yeah, made characters but not played.
Yeah. So to Jake and Devin, having played characters, having played the system, do you think it's more conducive to being on a mat, on a grid, or is it still pretty
the
freeform?
The same as D&D 5e. Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more for a grid because there's a lot more abilities that push.
That was my question.
There's a lot of things that are like move the opponent 5 feet.
Right.
And that, not to cut you off, but to jump in, one of my favorite things about 5th edition was how conducive it was to theater of the mind. And that is one of my biggest problems with Pathfinder or games that go in that direction is once you get to a certain level of crunch, you have to take away some ambiguity.
Right.
Which is cool. It adds other elements. It adds that more tactical kind of feel, but we don't play that. And
I don't want to have to buy a $10,000 wormwood table.
And it's crazy to me that some of the most popular podcasts, Glass Cannon that I love, with these great entertainers, play this game on a podcast where people are listening, which relies 100% on knowing your exact position. And I get it. Visual YouTube is more of a thing. But to me, it's like this is supposed to be a game. Role-playing games live in your mind. They don't, at least the rewarding parts of it for me live in the mind, not on a grid. If you want to play a grid game, there's always going to be better grid games that aren't role-playing games. There are tabletop strategy games that are always going to do that way better than even the crunchiest role-playing game out there. And that's another spot where I think 5th edition walked really well. So yeah, it's just, and going to the weapon mastery thing, more to like the flattening, the gamification. Like weapon mastery, like, okay, it's a new thing. That's cool. It's a little bit more crunch, but it's also a little more flavor. And what I love is not things that make it mechanically better, but give you more options. That's what I like. That's why I always play multi-class characters, like almost always, because I don't want to be better. I just want to be able to do more
Diverse.
shit.
Yeah.
And then so they give you weapon mastery, and then you say, after a long rest, you can change your weapon. Fucking really? Like, so your whole thing is you're this fighter, you're an expert in using a halberd. Until you take a minute, now you're an expert in using a rapier. And it's like, well, you do your drills. And it's just like, I get it.
Fighters can pick like 3 or 4 weapons that they get mastery with.
But you just change it.
Yeah,
You just fucking change
Yeah,
it. Like, it should be a commit to it. That's your character. And like what you were saying before, finding a way for a rogue, and maybe I'm twisting what you're saying, but like there should be times when different characters shine and different characters don't.
Yeah.
They struggle. And that's on the DM to make sure that different encounters allow different players' strengths to shine and different characters. If the game this is about broad appeal. This is about making it easier for novice GM, a DM, to run a game, to run a module, and have every character kind of be able to equally contribute all the time.
You know what I think?
And that's good for a game. I just don't like it.
What I think perhaps the most damning example in the context of what you're talking about is wizards healing themselves, because like healing has always been such a unique quality. I mean, I know it got a little broader with paladins and rangers and druids.
I mean, in 4th edition, everyone had healing surges.
Well, yeah, but you're
4th
talking
edition
to someone,
is the definition of gamification,
right?
though, right?
4th
It
is WoW in a book, right?
And in fact, if you
There
want
were
to
a lot
play,
of good things about 4th edition.
well, I was going to say, if you want to play a game with a mat, if you want to do a dungeon crawl, you should play 4th edition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's made for.
But I guess that, like, to me, the when you think about a party dynamic and balancing each other and working together, I'm sure there's still lots of opportunity for that. And I just haven't played it enough.
No different than D&D 5e. The weapon mastery stuff is just are like small things that like martial, like weapon wielding classes get that give them a little bit more diversity in things to do other than I hit with my weapon or I shoot with my
for
thing.
sure. And I think everyone agrees that those are good. But to Josh's point is just they've made it so you can switch it out on a long rest, so that the game is easier. And
you can adapt and
so that you can adapt, right? But like it does, and I agree, it does take away a bit of the flavor of it. Like I'm a fencer, like Inigo Montoya can't just switch to a halberd,
Well, then don't. If you're playing Inigo Montoya, then don't do that.
You're right, and that's the answer, right? Is that I wouldn't do that as a player, but the rules allow you to, and I mean, ultimately, we're talking about the rules. We're not talking about like
right.
Which,
whatever.
I mean, and maybe there'll be consequences to that when people try to break the rules.
I don't, Dan, agree with you about the healing thing for wizards. And
You don't?
The reason is because I feel like a good thing for them to get away with is this legacy idea of like, here's what your class does. Because like someone shouldn't have to just be the fucking party healer.
Sure.
That's and I think they've done a good job of getting away from that idea. Like you should be able to do more than just like make the fighter have more hit points so that he can do the cool shit. And I think that this edition, 5th edition in general, did a good job of that, and this has made it even better. Instead of it being one person's responsibility to use their resource to heal everyone,
Yep.
now the wizard is responsible for their own resource management to heal themselves.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. I still, I guess, when I think about unique roles, and how now many classes either have overlap or similarities. You're again.
Were you ever super pumped to play the healer?
Oh, never. Right.
Also, quick interjection. We've done this in our games where remember that hit points is not wounds. It is your energy, your stamina, your I think it's cool and thematic and puts ideas in my head when a wizard can use their magic to restore their vitality.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing to have. But I guess when I'm looking at this not just in the context of D&D. Maybe I'm looking at this at the hundreds of fantasy books I've ever read. That they're always and maybe that's the problem, right? Is that the book can stand alone, but when you're in a group and you have to do the same thing over and over again, it gets tired. It gets old. I do get that, but I guess I'm looking at the history of the genre and how it's always been fairly, categorized, and now it's becoming a little more homogenized.
Well, also, I mean, think how many classes are there in the player's handbook?
I don't know.
12.
12? Call it 12. How many players are at, an average table? 3, 4,
I'd say
5,
4 to 6.
4 to 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, so half of those are being used.
You're not going to
maybe
have
a
every
quarter.
class represented. If every class is sort of exclusive and here's what they do, and then everything else they cannot do. Then you get into this, do we have someone who's going to play a healer? Is someone going to be the frontline tank? Is someone going to be now, when there is overlap, you can have these sort of, mishmash ragtag groups of, there's my friends that we play every other week, and we just by happenstance all came to the table with ideas for fighters. And we all picked different, an Eldritch Knight, a Psy Warrior, and a Battle Master. And we're playing next week, but like it's sort of like an experiment to see, you can play you have the same class, different subclasses, and see how diverse we can make them. And if you have diversity within just one class among different subclasses, then I think the game is in a good position, because then you have other classes that do their unique thing, and then there's subclasses that even branch out even more. And I think overlap is going to happen because there's only so many things that you can do. But it makes it so that you can have everyone can pick a class that they want to play, a subclass that they want to play, and be able to sort of do all the things that you need to do in an adventure.
So my counter argument, which is kind of just beating the dead horse I already mentioned, is that 5th edition already did that. You could play, I mean, Warlock would be the one I would highlight the most. You can play so many different kinds of Warlock without multi-classing, with just what's in the rules. you can play a game without a healer. I think especially 5th edition of any kind of like fantasy role-playing game probably relies upon traditional healers the least because of how death saves work and short rests and long rests, like recovering hit points. It's pretty easy to have a party without a designated healer.
When we switched to 5th, that was my first initial take was you don't need a healer anymore.
So
Absolutely.
When I talk about the flattening, the gamification, I think it makes it less rewarding when you play a different class because they're closer than they ever were. Because every single class now, you pick your background, you pick your species, you pick your class.
You did that anyways.
You get your subclass at 3rd level, you get your feats at these levels. Like, they all progress the same. Versus before, they progress differently. So playing a wizard, a warlock, or a fighter progressed very differently. Like, you unlock different things at different levels, so it was a very different experience. Yes, you might, from a game way, say, well, each one gives you all these abilities, but they all work in the same kind of homogenized, as Dan said, plane. They all you get the choices at the same points, the same exact breakdown. So it's a little bit less like, dude, if you play a warlock in regular 5th edition, and then the next character you play is a fighter, like, totally fucking different. And like, where you feel like, oh shit, like I get this at this level, this is different. Like, oh, now like this is a cool like thing. Like, well, the warlock didn't really get anything here. Like,
I get what you're saying. It just feels like a weird nitpick. Like
I want different experiences from playing different characters.
No, I know, but
that.
I think just because you make the choices at the same points in character development or creation doesn't mean that they're the same result. Like, I feel like, everyone's getting a feat at 4th level. But that doesn't equate to every character being the same. Like, there's a lot of feats to choose from.
It's not at all about the character being the same. It's about how they unlock and develop. There's just a different feel, different chain of events. Now it's kind of all the same.
I think the caveat maybe is also we need to play a lot more of it.
Or at all.
Or at all to get a feel of it. I think that's going to be maybe next year we'll
I think that the power jumps, we talk about 3rd level, you pick the archetype, 5th level, you get
the tiers.
The tiers. It makes it easier for a GM because preparing for a group that is 3rd level that all just got their archetype is you can have, everyone's a pretty uniform power jump for everyone. You can prepare that easier. At 5th level, all the martial classes get their 2nd attack. The casters get their 3rd level spells. You can prepare for that. Whereas, the one big example from 5th edition, the standard 5th edition, is at 2nd level, druids got their, if you took Circle of the Moon druid, you could transform into a CR1 creature, which was very powerful. And it was the first, you could get multi-attack at 2nd level. You would pick a brown bear, you would get 2 attacks at 2nd level. And it is immensely powerful until 5th level. So if you have that Circle of the Moon druid in your party and they start wrecking all of your encounters, it's like you have to now adjust or do things on the fly. It makes it more, it puts more on the DM to provide challenging encounters to the entire group, rather than,
I think that we're still going to see that. Just like you had mentioned, everyone would take the Hexblade dip. You're going to see a new version of all of those things. Like, as people crunch it and figure out the best combinations, those things they're still there and they're going to come to the surface. Someone's going to go like, oh yeah, Monk 5, Fighter 2, you get 7 attacks or whatever, like some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
But if it's about adding more stuff and making it more flexible, why do you take Wizard? Easy example. 8 arcane traditions.
Because you want to release more books.
Because they're going to sell more books.
But why do they all have to have exactly 4 subclasses?
I think
some of them are terrible, like random fluff. Like,
some of them aren't great.
Just to make them all 4.
Right.
That's what I mean. Like, they just all have to have the same
I think they had to cut stuff out of this book. It's a big book.
Well,
it's a large. It's a
yeah,
large book.
they couldn't probably adding. They've already got 125 pages for classes. Adding any more would be, just kind of mind-boggling.
And
but
they couldn't cut the picture of the guy in the sweatshirt rolling a D20.
but well, I think something that we hit on before is we do as annoying as the moves that a company like Wizards or someone producing game content that we like when they make moves for money. It feels like they're making moves for money, which as a user doesn't always feel great. But we also recognize that at the end of the day, they have to pay everyone and have a product worth producing. So I mean, one other thing, caveat or thing I'd like to say is that I'd be very also interested to hear, and I'm sure I'll hear more reviews as the months go on, but what people who do the 8 encounters a day think of this game versus the ones that play it for story like we do.
So I wrote that down.
Yep.
The 8 encounter a day, getting away from that thing, because I did want to talk about that, because that is kind of encapsulates what I was trying to say with my hot take about why I wish this was a new edition. Because I think that the long rest, short rest mechanic, which is integral to the way that 5th edition works, every class's, every ability is based around it. I think that is bad, and we all kind of know it, and we all don't use it. No one is running a game where they do 8 encounters before they take a short rest. And that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you need to make an entire new edition to fix that. But like, it's there still, and you didn't fix it. And
I mean, maybe that's the question though. Are there groups out there that are playing it like a board game? I mean, I don't
probably.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
People, the dungeon crawl games are still like a hugely popular. I mean, that's like the like a lot of the OSR games.
Mm-hmm.
That's like dungeon crawl stuff. And
I mean,
you just keep chugging through, and you take a little 10-minute rest, you refresh yourself, you do some healing, and then you go to the next room.
if your game is about encounters, then like you're going to gear towards that kind of system.
Yeah.
If you've never played a role playing game, this is better for a DM who's never run any kind of, just doesn't even have a concept of like what running a game is like, because they're probably, I think a lot of this is to set them up to do more modules. They've done a lot of it with 5th, but like that is why Pathfinder, I'm sure people homebrew Pathfinder all the time, but Pathfinder lives and breathes on modules.
The adventure path system that would actually Dungeons and Dragons used to do it when Paizo was the publisher for, it was like Dungeon Magazine or Dragon Magazine and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was, they would have these little, like, part 1 of this adventure.
Sure. But again, that's like you can it's very hard to have a adventure path in the kind of games that we play.
Yeah.
Because how can you do that and not have a pretty heavy element of railroad? Because at the end of the day, like, even if you give choices at different points, how the fuck are you going to be on the same path at 20th level as first level unless you're following this string of encounters? You have choices in every encounter, but like you're just going encounter and encounter, and like
it's more of a board game.
It's a much more interactive board game, but at the end of the day, it's still more of a game, and we are always been more of the RP than the G.
So Josh, I wanted to mention, you mentioned something that I really agree with, and I wanted to expand on when you were saying how like you were saying that this book didn't change a lot of things, or maybe just kind of readjusted the wording. So I feel like there are some changes in here that they're presenting as these new things, and I'm like, but that's not a new thing. Like I mentioned the Tasha's thing, and that I read a lot of articles before this book came out about like what to expect and what was in it. And the thing that bugged me the most is people are talking about how they fixed the race issue. And I 100% agree changing it to species makes total sense. But making the way that they did the species where they don't give you an attribute bonus, and there's logical reasons why they did that, like, social reasons why they did that. But they already fixed it. It was already fixed in 5th. When Tasha's came out, Tasha's Cauldron said, okay, your orc doesn't have to have a negative intelligence. Every race gets 3 points for attributes. There you go. You fixed it. And then 5.5 came out and said, we fixed it. And it's like, but you already did. And there's a lot of things in here that are kind of just rules that are compiled from Tasha's and stuff like that I'm like, well, okay, you're just kind of representing it, which I guess is good because it allows new players to just buy one book and not buy older books. But it's not new.
I kind of feel though is that by fixing the way that Tasha fixed species and race thing by allowing you to allocate your 3 attribute points anywhere, that's the fix, is by giving the players the choice. By then shunting them back into backgrounds, you can just swap the word background for species, and it's the same
exactly.
problem.
It is. But and I think that the Tasha's method was better because of what Devin said about, maybe in my world, orcs are really sexy and they get a charisma bonus, Yep. Well, everyone gets 3 attribute points, and I encourage you to put them into charisma because orcs are sexy in my world.
They
Sexy orc mama.
It's they could have attached ability score increases to class. Just as easily. Anything.
Doesn't matter.
I think when they're, as long as they're in one place, that's rather than being like, and Pathfinder does this where, your background gives you, this number of ability score increases. Your class gives you this number of ability score increases. Having them in one place is very easy for making a character.
This is all a preamble to the thing Devin and I have already argued about, which we'll rehash our argument.
Sure.
But my favorite thing in this book and my least favorite thing is the same thing, and that is the backgrounds. So they, as Dan and Devin mentioned, they move the attribute bonus. You get 3 points, but they're tied to backgrounds now instead. Is it backgrounds? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or is it called profession?
Background.
All right, background. So they've tied it to background instead of species, which is fine. Doesn't matter where it goes, right? So what's great about this is the background feats. I think the background feats are fucking awesome. Everyone gets one depending on what
origin
background.
feats, they're called.
Origin feat. Yeah, you get one depending on what background you picked. And my problem is really simple with this. My problem is that they released a bunch of backgrounds and they didn't put a custom option. And what they've done is they've made a role-playing decision, which is the background of your character, that is now directly tied to the most important mechanical parts of your character, which are your background, your origin feat, which are pretty powerful, and your ability score increases. So, for example, let's say you... my favorite example is one of the backgrounds is the hermit. So let's say you want to be a hermit. You get 3 points that you can distribute into Constitution, Wisdom, and Charisma. You get the origin feat healer. And you get some other things too. The only origin feat that allows you to take the only background that allows you to take the origin feat healer is hermit. So you want to be a combat medic who has the origin feat healer? Well, the only way you can do that, besides asking your DM to make
rules is written.
Rules is written. The only way to do that is to be a hermit. Is to have grown up in the seclusion.
Actually, not rules is written. I take that back.
Or if you're a human, humans get an extra origin feat. But
There's a sentence in there that says your DM may offer
One
additional.
we'll talk about that in a second, Devin.
It's still in there.
But we'll talk about that in a second. But my point is, so I want to play a combat medic who is really good at healing. I want the origin feat healer. I'd like to be a halfling. Well, you can't have it. Sorry, you're a hermit. You weren't a soldier. can't do it unless your DM gives you permission, which is kind of the blanket of everything in D&D, right? If your DM gives you permission. All they had to do is put a custom option.
Or put,
These are
for
examples.
each background, choose one of 3 feats.
Uh-huh.
Right? That would be that would be kind of a middle ground.
But it's just, I don't like when things that are role-playing choices are kind of like character
Like your story.
fluff,
Yeah.
your story, are railroaded because of mechanical things.
But that's what this is a game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game about this book. I mean, in particular, not role playing, not whatever. Specifically, D&D 2024 Player's Handbook. This is to make a better game. Because, like, yeah, I mean, I get the species thing, changes from race, and people. There's weird connotations because orcs have a negative intelligence. Does it make sense that you get a bonus to? You're more likely to be intelligent because you were a scribe? No, probably you're more likely to have gone to be a scribe because you're more intelligent. But whatever, that's a game thing. It doesn't matter. But like all of these choices are set about like you're just gonna pick. This is to let you. What do you want to do? It doesn't matter. Like don't come up with a character first. Go through here and pick your. This is to pick your stats. Like you're going through it on the D&D Beyond character sheet, which is very user friendly, as online tools are. But it is not. This is to go into it and do all of this and then come up with a character.
But it is
That's
funny.
the problem. It's not come up with a character and make a system that helps you build that character. There are games that do that much better. Delta Green, Vampire, other things we've played. You need to have. You tell my dog. Also joining us in the studio, Red Dog. There are games that do that much better. You have to have your character concept in mind, or you should. You're going to have a much better character creation process when you have that mapped out before. This is to sit down, do your mechanical thing, pick the things you want to be able to have, your abilities, your whatever, and then after be like, okay, yeah, so he was a hermit, and then, he did this, whatever.
Every healer in every D&D campaign will always be a hermit.
Yeah.
But it's just a different focus, right?
Unless you find that sentence that says that your DM can provide additional backgrounds, which isn't. I mean, it's an afterthought at the end of a paragraph, and it's not a rule. And it's putting it's saying the DM can make up backgrounds. And we talked about the problem is if you are the new player, the new DM, you and your friends are like, let's play D&D because I like Stranger Things, and you pick up this book and you're like, I guess I'll be the DM. Then you're going to read that and go like, well, I'm not comfortable making up new backgrounds. Let's play the rules as written. So you want to be a healer, you have to be a hermit.
So one place
if you want the healer feat.
Yeah, yes.
One place I'll disagree with you though, Jake. If you had a blank custom option, to me that makes it worse because to me that's I'm going to skip background completely, so I can just pick the skills, the feat I want, and it doesn't even matter where it came from.
Yeah,
a better solution to me would be if the backgrounds had selections in them.
Well, I mean, I disagree because I feel like the more you allow people to customize it, the more you allow them to come up with a background that isn't hindered by rules.
But I think if the custom background says pick 2 abilities, pick 1 feat, pick 1 language, then
some players are going to just fill it out and never even think about their background.
Yeah.
But those people aren't going to think about their background anyway, right?
I think they're already not going to do that. To me, they're not going to have a problem with those selections,
right?
Because it's not going to matter to them that their background says hermit. They just want the healer feat. So a middle ground to push people towards, like Delta Green does it, where you choose a profession and it doesn't exactly. It gives you like, here's your starting line. Here's where you make adjustments. Like it's a balance where, like, yes, it matters, but there's many different types of scholars. There's many different types of whatever.
To that point, I think you could almost list the origin feats and then put the professions or backgrounds underneath. Like all of the backgrounds. What's that? like they say that
well, the origin feats are written in the origin. I mean, in the feats section, and yeah, Dan. I mean, I think like when I made the character for the little thing Josh was going to run, I didn't take a background, and I mean, I didn't even ask you. Sorry. But I took the things that were appropriate to my character, and then I wrote Arcane Theurge on the line where it said background. I made it up because I was like, well, I want him to be a wizard that can cast a cleric spell, but I don't want him to have the
I don't see that.
the sage background or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, because in my mind, it's you write the feat magic initiate, and then you could write down a number of different backgrounds that might apply to it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But well, yeah, Dan, at the very beginning of on page 199 where feats start, well, on page 200, origin feats are all listed separately. And I think the origin feats are the best part of the new character creation because it allows you to add a cool, like, quirky kind of background thing to your character. You know, like musician, like, you know, you play an instrument so you can like play it during a long rest to give people a bonus, you know, shit like that. And like, and there's a decent sized list of them, and they're all probably some that are way better than others, but I think that's cool, giving everyone the option to kind of pick one of those feats, and they're in their own category. So they're not something that's going to like be like, oh, I got to take this because I build on this to get this other thing, like the way that it was.
yeah,
in
no, I
3.5.
guess I see how you're breaking the two apart, but I guess my point is, rather than attaching the feat to the background, you attach the background to the feat. I guess
They did it with ability scores. I was mistaken.
Yeah. So my thought is, you have your whole list of origin feats. That's great. Those are very cool. And then you apply your role-playing story to that origin feat.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because
I guess they could have done it multiple different ways. It just
They definitely made the backgrounds matter a lot more because
Yep.
backgrounds were already in 5th edition and
Yeah.
they were kind of purely
Throwaway.
flavor.
Yep.
There was skill. You get skills from them, but
They all
like
had
they definitely have more weight.
And they had special abilities. I mean, most people
they were a
ignored
little
them.
wonky.
Yeah, but they had ones, you know, there was one called Folk Hero that was like, you know, you get, you know, people will provide shelter
Yeah.
and food
Yep.
for you, which is a cool role playing thing if your DM is paying attention to that stuff.
I would say when you're making a first level character, that background is probably the most important thing you pick. And I do really like the feats. And my, you know, and I will admit my complaint about the origin, the backgrounds is silly because it's something that we will just not, you know,
Pay
we'll just
attention
fix
to.
it. We'll
Right.
just fix it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I hope that that's what everyone does. But I mean, if we're talking about the rules in the book and what we like and don't like, then I think they could have just done a better job with that.
All right. So before we kind of get to our final thoughts on it or whatever, anything new, anything we haven't touched on, new concepts, new changes.
Oh, I mean, I don't think we're going to, but all the classes have obvious differences and changes that have been made. So I think our discussion has mostly been on the repercussions of the changes in a more global sense, right?
I think it's hard to judge. We're judging a game with 1/3 of the books released. I think that what happens with the DMG and the Monster Manual will inform a lot more of where this game is headed. I've already read that the DMG has changed the sort of encounter balance and and made it actually like way harder, which surprised me considering they seem to be toning the game down. But I think that speaks to the fact that this player's handbook, these player characters are more powerful than they've ever been in any other edition.
Yep.
And the example that I saw was that a tier 4, you know, like 17th level party, an encounter that would have been 2 adult green dragons with the new rules. And I don't know if this is correct. I don't know if they got the rule right, but they said it would be 7 adult green dragons, the same challenge rating.
Is it
Well,
The challenge rating system in the monster manual is bunk anyway.
It is awful, and so we'll see if it's different. But I mean, the point was just that they've ramped it up. It seems, and we'll see. There's a lot to look at.
Maybe it's just a semantics thing, but one thing I was reading was saying they're trying to make it more lethal.
Maybe
more swingy. I think that might be where there's big damage. Where we played a game with Jake, and most combats didn't go past 3 rounds,
which is great.
Yeah, it's good
because it keeps the
fresh.
game moving.
I don't know that that's that different. We're
learned
pretty
that.
far into a campaign where, like, I always hear these criticisms like, "Oh, D&D combat's just grind on and on forever," and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
That's
almost every 5th edition combat I've been, 3 rounds is
I think
pretty much done.
The main reason for that, the biggest thing, is just that I'm such an awesome dungeon master.
Oh,
I think it's
King
also in part of being on a podcast too, is that we've maybe started to gear ourselves towards shorter or more succinct combats.
I don't know. I mean, I think that is part of it. We want to go that way, and not want to do things like waves of enemies or things that are really
I tried that.
Intrinsically grindy. But I think it's 5th edition characters are powerful. Like, they can all do a ton of damage. And I do think the current challenge rating system is pretty broken. I think, like, if you have 4 4th level characters, a CR4 is a breeze. Almost all of them like that. So I'm interested how they change that. About the new books, I know you guys have talked about that. The other monster manual thing. What's that called? Something.
Oh, the
Flea Mortals?
Flea Mortals,
yeah.
Which, I mean, if they can build it into the game, that's great. The things I like about monsters in 5th edition are the like lair actions, legendary actions. I think just those concepts, whether or not they're written into the specific creature, I think allow you to really flavor up an encounter.
Yeah, I hope we see a lot more unique abilities for monsters and a lot more abilities that aren't necessarily just it attacks on its turn or whatever.
Yeah.
So one thing
I'd also like to see a Dungeon Master's Guide that
is
matters.
useful. Yeah, 100%.
Dude, I played D&D
Beyond-
forever.
that's so funny.
You just look at it
I
for
forgot
magic
about
items,
that.
right?
Yeah.
There,
Yes.
Deborah Ann Wool, Matt Mercer. There's a lot of like big, content creator DMs that are contributing to the new Dungeon Master's Guide, which I think is good.
We'll have to review it as well. So one thing that I think is kind of hopeful and telling, I mentioned this to you guys a while ago, but let me read to you Shocking Grasp, and we can talk about the main difference in this. Lightning springs from you to a creature that you try to touch. Make a melee spell attack against the target. On a hit, the target takes a d8 lightning damage, and this is the part that matters. And it can't make opportunity attacks until the start of its next turn. It used to be they cannot make reactions, and now it's they can't make opportunity attacks. And so what that says to me is there is going to be a lot more monsters that have unique and cool reaction abilities, which is awesome because it's not just like the monster attacks on its turn. It's like you do something and the monster reacts to it.
There's a repercussion.
And there's a lot of that in the Flea Mortals book, right, Devin?
Yes.
So I think that they're borrowing from that a bit, and they're also just looking at the fact that like the monster just sits there, and if it's one big monster versus a party, it's kind of stupid. It's kind of boring. So I hope that is an indication that we're going to see some cool shit in the Monsters Manual.
Nice.
So maybe for kind of our final thoughts, this will be a little bit of a rehash, but go around and maybe we each say one thing we like, we don't like, and we think was a missed opportunity with this new book. So if you've already kind of talked about it, you can just kind of hit on it, move over it, but especially that third thing. So why don't we go in the same order we kind of had our initial thoughts, Jake?
Like something I haven't already complained about.
Your main number one, the thing you like about the new edition, what you don't like about it, and a missed opportunity.
Okay.
You can just be bullets too.
Shit. What do it's tough for me to say what I don't like because the only thing I'm really not crazy about is, well, I also don't like. All right, I got it. I'm gonna
What's
tell
it
you.
like?
I'm gonna tell you the two things that are kind of the same. The things I like and don't like. I'm gonna talk about the artwork because I'm sure you guys will cover some of the other shit. I hate the stupid pictures of people sitting around the table. As soon as I saw that
part of the book's not for you.
Before I even talked to
not.
Josh. No, I understand, but like you're insulting people by saying that they need to understand that they're a person that's sitting at a table. And
This is what it looks like to use your imagination.
I looked at it and I just thought that's a bad choice. That was a bad design choice to have that in this book, and I stand by that. I think it's a bad design choice.
Because I not to jump on you. This is your turn, but because it's taking away immersion
Yes.
from the get-go.
100%.
That's the only thing that like really truly bothers me about it is that you're reading a chapter on learning to play the game and it's reinforcing that you're playing a game.
Yep.
Instead of you are stepping forth into a world of fucking sorcery
Right.
and magic and whatever.
Yeah. So, I didn't like that. So I didn't like that part of the artwork. As far as missed opportunities, and I could do a whole episode on this. I don't like dark vision. I don't like the way it works. I don't like that almost every single species has it. I think it takes away from a lot of cool
Is there still low light?
atmospheric
No.
sort of stuff but that's a whole side argument. So I feel like a missed opportunity is changing the way dark vision worked. They could have done that and it would have been fine. So something that I didn't talk about that I really like, I like a lot of the art in this book. It's really cool. I mentioned this when we played our little one shot the other day, but on page 32, there's this picture. So I got to give you some background. So my daughter is 3.5 years old and she is obsessed with the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon from the 70s. This picture is a reimagining of the characters from the 70s cartoon. So I showed her this picture and she immediately was like, Hank the Ranger, Bobby the Barbarian, Diana the Acrobat, Presto the Magician.
Awesome.
And then if you read the little thing, it mentions all 4 of those characters. It also mentions a character named Sheila, but there's only 4 people in the picture. And my 3-year-old daughter immediately got the joke because she said, Sheila's invisible. Because she has a cloak of invisibility. She's a thief.
That's funny.
I mean, there's some cool Easter eggs in here as far as the art. That one's my favorite. 174, the evoker, is Taco from the Adventure Zone. They don't say it, but it's 100% Taco from the Adventure Zone. So there's some really cool like Easter eggs and like, D&D cultural references that are cool.
Driz Do'Urden is in there.
He's in there too, of course.
Kind of
You said Wrestlin's in there too?
He is. He's
And
right
that-
at the beginning.
that evidence cuts directly against what I've been saying that this book isn't for us. This is for new people.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's a cartoon from the 70s.
Well,
Yeah.
they're trying to appeal to all of us,
And
right?
that Dragonlance book is from the 80s or 90s, so yeah.
all right, Devin, a like, a don't like, and a missed opportunity.
What I like, another small detail, page 216, it has a picture, or it has a diagram of all the weapons, and it has simple melee weapons and what they look like. It has all the simple ranged weapons and what they look like, martial, melee, and martial ranged weapons. And on the next page, on 218, it shows all the armors. I think if I'm, imagining a character and creating a character, going to the equipment and looking up what kind of weapon do I want to wield, and seeing this art that, it's cool. It makes me, I see the pike and it's like, oh, I can just imagine, a town guard character with a big pike and a shield. And it's just, I like having, I think 5th edition, the player's handbook just had, they didn't have it all on a table with everything labeled. It was just sort of little like splash art and things like that. But having this sort of, it's like I open up a suitcase and I see, or I open the secret compartment in the wall and I see all these weapons arranged. It's cool. And I like being able to see what, half plate armor, and imagining I can see it. I have this visual thing that I can latch onto and imagine my character, wielding that weapon or wearing that armor. The things I don't like in missed opportunities, I think it would be put one of those
Make it bigger.
one of those perforated little battle maps or like a character sheet in the back.
Is there no character sheet, or is it just on?
There is,
What's in there?
but you have to lay the book flat to do
page
like a
34.
copy. They use what I think other editions had, like little perforated thing in the back with those like a character sheet, like a spell sheet, and then I've gotten book. I don't know if was it 3.5 or some other books, but put some stuff in the back that people can like rip out and use it to copy, and like a little 5x5 grid, something like that, so people can actually have the things that they can play.
All right. Like, don't like, and missed opportunity. Missed opportunity is maybe what I'm going to say is what I didn't like about this edition, which was, I think it was a missed opportunity to not figure out a better method for skills. I just, to me, skills are important, and it's just weird that you can be a 15th level character and have like a 2 or a 1 or nothing in a skill that it's really challenging to elevate your skills without it being at the cost of the other ways in which your character progresses. That's a missed opportunity.
I agree, Dan. I think saving throws are even worse part of that.
And then, although the saving throws, I guess, with some of the ability score increases, you can start to modify them, but still, it's pretty slow. The thing that I don't like, I'd say, is, and something we kind of hit on, is what Josh was saying, that every class has the 4 subclasses. For me, like the 4 subclasses for a wizard with all the different schools of magic, and 4 subclasses for clerics with all the different gods. I understand that the objective is to sell more books, but it just comes across as kind of incongruous, because then also I feel like what we also mentioned is that some of them feel more like fluff subclasses than they are substantive. And then what I like about it, I do like as much as we can sometimes complain about the gamification, I have yet to play the system, so a lot of my critiques and compliments are hearsay, but I do like that there could be and will be more variety when it comes to your character executing different things and different options. So, we'll see.
All right, well, I got to think on my feet a little bit because you took my don't like and my missed opportunity that I had in mind. I definitely agree about the skill thing. It would seem like with all the power creep, a pretty minor power creep could be at every other level. You pick 1 point of a skill that you're not proficient in to add to that skill. But the thing that I like is that it's 5th edition, because I think 5th edition is good. I like that they didn't make big wave top changes. I like the simplicity in general of the basic proficiency bonus. I like the basics of the action economy. Those are things that I know some people don't love, some people critique. Those are things I like, and I like that they're still there. Don't like, I would say, I'm kind of just taking a different cut on what you said, but the dislike is I think there's less consequences of what you might lose or not have access to by your choices, because they want to make it more user friendly. I think, and there's a big pro to that, but this is a dislike, not a con. I think that it's just really easy to make a character who's going to be good in whatever situation comes up with the system. And I like a system that, maybe is going to expose flaws and advantages a little bit more inherently. And missed opportunity, I think would be...
The books are incomplete. We only have 1/3 of the core books.
We do, but this is like nothing in the DMG or the Monster Manual is going to change how you make a character. That's what really this is, and that's really what the only thing that's changed. So a missed opportunity is just to the layout is much easier to access this book, but I think they missed the opportunity to push imagination first, to strive to tell people to conceive of a character first and make the book layout support making that character. I think this makes it much easier to learn how to play a role-playing game, how to make a character, but I think they miss the mark in leading with imagination.
I think to that point, maybe it's making a book for beginners versus making a book for experienced players.
Yeah, but it could be a missed opportunity to teach people from
Sure.
get-go.
Yeah, I think that you should lead with that with unexperienced new players, and maybe it's in that beginning section that you ripped out and threw in a fire.
I did read pretty much the whole how to play thing.
Oh,
and it does do a pretty good job. And like, I've never played a role playing game. You know, this is kind of how you play it. This is how it works. This is, you know, you've never done it. Maybe you've seen it. That's fine. It's when then you're making a character. It's just immediately into mechanics, and that's not that different than any other D&D book. But if you're going to change the layout, change how you present your game, I think they miss an opportunity to inspire people to come up with the vision first, and then let the gamification follow from that.
Page 49. Quick note. Page 49. It's the front page of the character classes. It has all of the character classes. It has all of the subclasses. So Ranger, for example, weave together martial prowess, nature magic, and survival skills, then embody and then it goes on to name the subclasses. Beastmaster, to bond with the primal beast. Fey Wanderer, to manifest Fey mirth and fury. Gloomstalker, to hunt foes that lurk in darkness. Hunter, to protect nature with martial versatility. I think, in this book where you have the classes, and you have a limited number of subclasses, because there are more that were published in, supplements to the player's handbook. They couldn't put them all in here. I'm sure we'll see more later. But, yes, do imagination. But, these are the classes and the subclasses that they have in the book. Give all it is. It's just one sentence describing what each of these subclasses are. I could read this through and have just these couple of words will direct your sort of imagination to any number of these.
But I think some of the irony is like for cleric, life domain, to be a master of healing and be a hermit. Like that's the.
It doesn't say that.
I know it doesn't say that, but that's a little bit of the on the rails thinking again for a beginner. That
I think what this page does in particular, Devin, is it allows you to read that and then base your character around that instead of what Josh is saying, which is to kind of start with a blank page.
Yes,
and then
before you get this is easy presentation. Great, like one page you can read a blurb about every subclass. Before you get this page, they've already done all this shit about like you have no experience, you learn how to play what D&D is before you see what a subclass is. Give me a page about imagining a character. You're creating a character, just that. Put that first, then you can get into this
structure.
That's what I mean. Like this is fine. This is very accessible, very user-friendly, very, as Dan said, I think this definitely helps the beginner approach. But it's not inspiring imagination.
What they did in the old book, which was really good, and I the way when I rarely have a new player, the way I teach them is I say who is your favorite fantasy character? All right, Aragorn, let's think about, you want to make a character that's like Aragorn? Okay, let's think about, what he does, and then find the class and the mechanics that work best for that, And in the other book, they actually used Bruno Battlehammer as the example of, and it's
You come up with
it's character first. Yeah,
the
it's
concept of Brunor
yeah.
first, and then it guides you through how to make Brunor into your character.
right. Yeah,
And arguably, it did it better than this does it.
Uh-huh.
This presents you your options first, and then you end up with a character.
I think that's a good sort of missed opportunity. But it's again, I mean, it's kind of a minor thing, right? Like, I mean,
I played.
Yeah.
A friend of mine is a big Overwatch player, and he came to the D&D table and says, "I want to play Doomfist," and
Cool.
and he tried, and the GM had to make all these concessions and make a lot of these changes to make that, to make Doomfist in D&D. So yes, have an idea for a character, but if people get locked into, I want to make Aragorn, it leaves
that's
room
what
for
everyone does when they first start playing. You didn't do that? I definitely did that. My
No.
first character was a fucking elf ranger.
first time I played D&D, it was D&D 4th edition, and I was just looking through some of the starting options.
Now I know where the trauma started.
It was not, I liked it. And
I know. I'm teasing.
we had the login for the online character builder. It was super easy, and I was scrolling through, and I was like, "Oh, Minotaur, awesome, cool." I imagine a big Minotaur with a big axe, and
You know what else is big?
the horns.
The crits.
Yep. But people make RPG characters differently. I don't think it's fair to say that everyone comes to the first time to the table.
I think
with,
the most common thing is that new players, and I don't fault them for this, but I think the most common approach is that new people who come to the table say, like, I want to play a guy who is like this. Not necessarily I want to play Aragorn, but, Aragorn's my favorite character from like fantasy, and I want to play a character that's like him, and I think that's totally fine. And part of it's a safety blanket, right? Like if you're new to role playing, you're like, well, I know how Aragorn would, like, what would Aragorn do?
Yep.
And when you're a kid, that's what you do, right? Like you pretend to be Spider-Man, you pretend to be Aragorn, like, and so I think that's a good stepping stone, and I'm not trying to disparage it,
Yeah, the missed opportunity we had was the only way to make Devin say he doesn't like anything is to say that we like it.
No, I listen.
You said
that with a smirk.
You still haven't told us you don't like it.
One out of 3 books. It's D&D 5e. My criticisms of this book are the same criticisms I have of D&D 5e.
So would you say that they didn't do enough?
I mean, you guys.
The Wizards
know how
of the
I feel
Coast is listening, Devin.
about D&D 5e. Listen.
Off the mic. The mic's off.
Okay.
It's turned off. Tell us the truth now.
The red light's off.
D&D is a great game to play if you're playing tabletop role playing game for the first time. There gets to be a point where I got to it in 5e where I wanted to do more. I wanted more options. I had specific concepts in mind of things that I wanted a character to do, and in the rule system you can sort of do it, but you're hindering your progress. You're not going to get your high level spells, but also be able to do this thing. The bonus action thing where everyone still tries to maximize their bonus action. And again, in this game, in the 2024, they've done more with the bonus actions. So pretty much everyone has access to bonus actions. But I think there are other better, there are games that you graduate from, like D&D, great game to start with, and then you can move on to other.
Are you saying you're advanced?
Say that fixing the bonus actions was a missed opportunity?
Yeah,
I'd be a great reporter.
You're a real conundrum where you literally can say that Pathfinder is better because it's crunchier, but then I know you also love super rules light, like story driven.
Can I not like both?
You just don't like being a moderate. You don't like walking the line.
I mean, I feel the same way. Like I like them for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like but I feel like I like tabletop strategy games like Warhammer and stuff. That is all about like finding the nerdiest combo that's going to do the most damage. And I also like playing role playing games that have one rule, like a one sheet of rules. Like you can like both, but they're for different reasons. They scratch different itches.
We've talked about how D&D 5e, Pathfinder, the D20 systems, they are D20 like combat simulators. I think Pathfinder Second Edition is a better D20 combat simulator. A lot of the things you talked about with skill progression, it's that Pathfinder has a way to has that. They have skill feats, they have general feats, they have class feats, they have background feats. Each level you're making a choice on one of those. The difference between what they did with general feats and origin feats here in the 2024 player handbook, Pathfinder already has that. They have the background feats, they have general feats, they have class feats. It's 5e is catching up, and they're doing they're making changes.
Why do you
of
put
more
it that
modern
way?
day
Like it's
format.
catching, like that is the goal, is to get to more rules, more numbers, more like. I think the thing I like about 5e is that it scratches my crunch itch when I play Monster of the Week too long, and it's kind of like it's taxing to do more than a couple Monster of the Week combats because there's just not many rules. There's just not many rules.
So abstract.
But it's also like I don't want to get into the minutia of what it takes to stand up from a prone condition when you're weakened one and whatever. Like that to me can be a good thing in that it gives you a little bit of both. It gives you some crunch, but it leaves enough out for DM discretion or just flow of the game.
But it's hard, Josh, to have both because what you're describing that you like about D&D, I think goes hand in hand with what you don't like about everything being standardized, because that standardization isn't in Pathfinder. I assume like there's more customization, there's more creativity. You got to pour through all the rules to find it, but
There are more choices that you make regarding your
it's
character.
the middle ground,
right?
It's that there is enough crunch. You have enough different mechanical things that are different without the minutia of a 700-page core rulebook. Like it's a middle ground. That's what I like about it. That it gives me some of that without having to be an expert in it. I've talked about this before, but Glass Cannon Podcast has been playing Pathfinder 2e for years and years and years. And after every episode, they have a bonus episode, and part of that episode is going over the rules they got wrong. These are professionals who are making their living doing at it, and they still have to have an episode.
But they also they're playing Pathfinder First Edition and Second Edition on different shows, and a lot of their confusion, that the things that they get mistaken are Pathfinder First Edition rules that they misinterpret, that they mix up with Second Edition.
Sure.
That's from my experience listening to them. A lot of the things and we get stuff wrong too. I mean, we do grappling totally different than
Actually, I
anyone
think
else.
we're perfect, just like 5.5.
I think a lot of it
I didn't say that.
we don't care. And this rule system helps you not care a little bit more because there isn't every single answer in there. There isn't every single individual situation. Like a lot of times, just like, do you think it's a little easier to do it because of X, Y, or Z? Then give them an advantage.
Yeah.
You don't have to think of the 20 different mechanical ways that would benefit you in this circumstance.
Well, that's the golden rule of RPGs is like the GM, if you don't know the rule, you just make a ruling and then you can look it up later. That's not that's with any RPG system that we've played.
All right. Well, we've outstayed our welcome. And
And this is an example of alignments as well. Wait, are there alignments in this fucking book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I missed that part. But
They
Devin is
describe-
clearly lawful and Josh
The only
is clearly
reason
chaotic.
the only reason why I know that is because on the character making process you can choose, and it gives a description.
I
of
think
each
it
alignment.
downplays it more,
Yeah, probably.
which I think we've done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything is moved away from the kind of polemic nature of
They're
high
not
fantasy
they're,
to
they're 100% just not rules. They're just for fluff, right? They're just for kind of guiding your character role playing experience, which is what they should be, honestly.
Yeah, it's a further direction that 5th edition already went in.
Oh,
With
yeah. 39.
detect protection from evil. It doesn't literally protect you from evil aligned characters. It's, devils, demons, whatever.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Page 39, 40, 41. It's basically like, here's alignments and here's maybe how they would affect your role playing, which I perfect. That's exactly what it should be.
So there we go. D&D 2024 Player's Handbook. A little mixed bag. Things we like, don't like, missed opportunities. Overall,
Give it a try.
It's a product. We're going to give it a try. I also just, we already got all the books.
Let's just play 3.5.
We're going back, baby.
We'll see you for whatever one comes out next. I think the DMT comes out next.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah.
Do you know that Pathfinder second edition?
A police car and a screaming siren, pneumatic drill, ripped up concrete, a baby wailing, straight out howling, a screech of brakes and lamp lights blinking. That's entertainment. That's entertainment.
That's nasty.
Now there might be some characters where it's like, I'm a wizard and I want to be proficient in all of my.
Wait, one.
What's a big one?
Wait for it.
Oh, red dog.